Good afternoon, everyone. We've come to the last session of the summit. I think you got a sigh of relief. And this is on women and sustainable development, partnerships for planet, people, and prosperity. So I'm pleased to, first of all, welcome all the panelists. Two are here with us, and two are joining us virtually. If they are already on, maybe we can see, where are they? Oh, here. So I don't need to introduce them because their CV is already in the bag, and we can go straight on to our discussion. And what I want to do is just refer briefly to my notes about sustainable development because that's our topic today. And as you know, our performance on the SDG, not only in Malaysia, but regionally and also worldwide, is already off track even before the pandemic. And the impact of COVID-19 was just to worsen retrenchment, loss of employment, increased poverty, and of course the disruption in the health and education services. And we saw a lot of mental health problems, and of course we exposed the inequalities, and of course we see global warming has also rebounded. And in Malaysia, the impact, and I'm quoting from the Department of Statistics, the impact of people is seen in the reversal of the SDG on poverty and nutrition. We were doing quite well, but there's a little bit of reversal. You see living standards squeezed, inflation rising, and unemployment. Employment is very sluggish. And because of the disruption in education and health, you're going to find deficits. Already we are talking about thousands of missing boys, and also people dropping out of universities and of schools. I'm very concerned about the missing boys because we need to track them. And of course, neglected gender dimensions in all the SDGs. And it's worse because we lack data when it comes to gender. On prosperity, we see still volatility. You see the stock market going down, going up a little bit, come down again. And you see imbalance between formal and informal workers and between rural or peripheral localities and urban areas. And of course, non-inclusion, we are very worried about that. And planet, even pre-pandemic, we were already not doing well in Malaysia. There's worsening climate impacts, there's floods, you can see landslides, there's biodiversity loss and general degradation. And our adaptation is also weak. And during the MCO, the sky was very clear, but that was just a temporary phenomenon. On peace, I think the cohesion was placed under stress. But we came out, I think we weathered that crisis well. We saw how people got together to help each other during the pandemic. The response has been quite inclusive, I would say, particularly from the civil society. But I think the issues around migrants, undocumented refugees, and stigmatization still persist. And of course, now with the pre-elections, there's political flux. So I hope we can find recovery soon to improve the community cohesion. Somehow our community cohesion is very, 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 very tied to the politics in this country. So given all these challenges, I'll now call on the panel to give their views on the directions women can take in that whole nation approach that we talk about so much, even in RMK 12, to improve our performance on the SDGs, to leave no one behind. That is what UNDP is pushing for, particularly social inclusion, good governance, and environmental protection. So I'm going to start with Shanta from the global perspective, and then we go virtually for a regional perspective to Mia, right? and then we'll come back to you, and then we go to Singapore. Okay, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tan Sri. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shanta Dwarkasing, and I am the Director of Programs at the UN Global Compact Network, Malaysia and Brunei. It's really my pleasure being here, and I hope that I can give some meaningful contributions to this panel discussions, considering it's a Friday afternoon. So first of all, I think it really requires somebody who is very optimistic and idealist if you want to be happy working in sustainability. And because of course, if we are looking at all the pressing sustainability issues, the climate crisis, and especially after the pandemic, that there's a lot of backset on many of the sustainability objectives that had been achieved before. So having said that and seeing what are all the issues and problems at hand, I think taking one step back and really looking at what does sustainable development mean? If all the SDGs, if we really want to achieve those by 2030, still a lot of work to be done, but it's also really necessary to apply a gender lens to each of these SDGs. As mentioned, leaving no one behind, and inclusivity is very core at sustainability and at the SDGs. So applying a gender lens is necessary as we understand that women in general have less access to resources. When we're looking at SDG number 8, for example, decent work and economic growth, it is important that women are being given special attention in order to ensure that there can be sustainable development and progress there. Similarly to education, applying a gender lens here and making sure that also women and girls are getting the equal access to quality education as compared to their male peers. So this is how I can go by every single of the SDGs. But perhaps what is more relevant as well is to see at, who are the key stakeholders that are playing and that are here to have the responsibility to make that change. So of course, we're looking first into policymakers and to the governments. And because this is really fundamental for women to have their legal framework to being able to exercise their rights. Secondly, civil society and organizations. So the UN Global Compact is also categorized as one of those CSOs. And I understand there's more here, even on this panel as well. And to really fight for women's rights and ensuring that there's equal access for women and to all of these resources. Now, thirdly, and this is where UNGC has most of its engagements with, is with the private sector. So the business community is really having a responsibility as well to ensure that women are advancing economically and socially as well in this part of the society, that they are able to exercise their professional rights. So businesses are uniquely positioned as well to make a change and to drive the sustainability agenda, and hence women specifically as well. So I find it interesting, and I actually came across this study that demonstrated that if we're looking to how women are climbing up on the corporate ladder, there's still a lot of work to be done. And as we heard from the previous panel as well, many positions in corporate are the typical middle-aged men as compared to women. But however, looking at the Chief Sustainability Officer role, over the time span in 1 decade, from 2011 towards 2021, this was a study in the US, the number of women CSOs has accelerated to 94%. So there was a big increase in there. So looking at sustainability, perhaps is sustainability a role that just naturally goes better with women, perhaps because sustainability is more associated to some female traits, or I'm not really sure what could be the reasons, but it is an interesting comment to make. So I'll leave it at there first, and looking forward to the further discussion.
Thank you very much, Shanta. We will move on to Mia. Of course, gender lens in all the SDGs, that's very important. You stress on that. You look at the stakeholders, and I think the role in governance, the role of the Chief Sustainability Officer comes in very strongly. I don't know whether we have them in all the corporations. So if we can have Mia, Mia, over to you.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. What
Hello.
time is it now in New Zealand?
Actually, it is. It's not too late. It's only 7:30 in the evening. So this is one of the early sessions that I have. Anyway, I just want to start because I didn't have opportunity to speak earlier to congratulate the KSI Strategic Institute and the president, Tan Sri Michael, on this initiative. It's really a fantastic initiative, and then also for inviting me to take part in it. And I only hope that after I have listened yesterday and today, in particular, after the excellent keynote by Her Excellency Minister, and then my Prime Minister, and then my former boss, Ibu Armida, that I will be able to actually add some value to this fantastic exchange of knowledge, experience, passion, most particularly. I would like to stay on a positive note, as it was said. This is the last session of the event, and we definitely don't want to part on a depressing note. But it's going to be a little bit challenging because there are so many concerns. And let me start with the false positive. And I'll explain why I call it false positive. So 2 days ago, the World Economic Forum has released its Global Gender Gap Report for 2022. And the leading finding in that report was that we will need only 132 years to remove the gap between men and women and to reach the global parity for women. And that was positive because that period was 4 years shorter than in the previous report. So I call it false positive because if you compare it to the report of the year before that, you will then see that actually we have added 32.5 years over 3 years of pandemic to closing the gender parity gap. And that is definitely not acceptable situation, and it's yet another call that we will need to act on the issue. Another finding that is not new in the report is that among 10 top countries that are listed as successful in closing gender parity gap, there is no Asian developing country, and the only Asian country is actually, if you call it Asian, is New Zealand. So that is another, I think, challenging issue of the region to face and to be able to, somehow try to address it in a much more proactive way. So the report also has lots of positive changes that happened at the individual countries. I hope you'll find time to read it. And I would like to focus in the little time that I have on some changes in trade area, because I'm a trade economist, and because most of the changes that happened over the last 3 years with respect to gender in the international community, or most noticeable changes, are in relation to trade. In the context of the title of this summit, which is Reaching the New Heights. And that's why I say this is the closest sort of comparison. And why do I use trade? Because trade is actually singularly nominated as the means of implementation of sustainable development goals. So it is the mechanism through which we will be reaching necessary level of prosperity, through which then we will be able to simultaneously also address the issues of inclusivity and sustainability. And the situation is more complex. If we have time, I can return to that. But the task for trade is definitely clear. And so we know that for sustainable development, we need trade. do we also need trade to reach the gender parity? And this is the question that is more difficult to answer, because traditionally trade was always claiming to be gender neutral, and was not really paying the specific attention to promoting women. So this changed and changed at the multilateral level, and changed at the level of a country, at the level of communities, and also at the regional level. And it actually contributed to a very unique historic situation where for the first time, all three global institutions, international organizations that are responsible for trade and development, World Trade Organization, UNCTAD, and International Trade Center, are actually under the helm, under the leadership of women, right? And then when you add to that also the leadership of IMF and certain other institutions, the rise of women in terms of the governance at the global and also, as we know, at the regional level, as we saw from yesterday's opening, etc., opens the hope that we will be able to actually scale this momentum where women will be making more decisions and guiding the policies. And now why is that important? Because there is research shows that there is a correlation between women actually working in areas, for example, in trade on the ground, and making the decisions in this area, making these decisions towards better outcomes in terms, as was said by the speaker before me, making more sort of putting more attention to sustainability and inclusivity than their men counterparts. And so we definitely have an interest in putting women forward to these leadership positions in at any level, but definitely, as I say, speaking from my trade area, in area of trade that is instrumental to delivering sustainable goals. Let me stop here, and then I hope we can expose some of these issues later on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia, for bringing us to another dimension, which is trade, which is very close to this summit. The heart of this summit is about business, women in business and the economy. So I think you have stressed the important, the close, had to bridge the gender gap is still a long way to go, but the opening up of the opportunity for leadership in trade by women is something that we should look forward to in terms of making decisions with better outcomes for women. Okay, I'm now going to go to Venessa. This is a Malaysian story. So let's listen to her on sustainable, the work.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Selamat lemai. It means selamat petang in Iban, or good afternoon. Again, I would like to introduce myself to those who are just being here. I'm actually from East Malaysia, from Kuching, Sarawak, and I manage a research company in Kuching. Thank you. I have seen some Sarawakians here. So I'm not an expert when it comes to sustainable development goals, but what I can offer is actually perspective as an indigenous woman and the importance of, because we mentioned about gender inclusion, and I think one thing missing from the past, since yesterday's discussion, is the concept of intersectionality, intersection. I think that's really important because yes, we can bring women to the table to make decisions, to make decisions, but then we have to think about those voices who we can't hear yet. Like we mentioned about trades, and we're talking about ESG just now during our pre-conversation, and I was just wondering about the business owner from small companies back in rural areas, do they even know what SDG means? I think that's the important conversation we should have. Like, how do we disseminate this information to be accessible to this community, and not only talk about it at the high level, in terms of the ecosystem. I think that's really important. And again, my expertise is in education, and we do have a lot of initiatives run by teachers in regards to STEMs and also digital citizenship to cater to all of these SDGs. And the next question is, how do we support students, children, to be able to be part of achieving this SDG? I think that's really important as well. It's like a small group that we can focus on. So when we mentioned about the missing boys just now, Tan Sri, and of course, we're also thinking about the girls who can't even afford to have education because, they have to do unpaid work, informal work to support the family. I think that's really important as well. And I just want to make a comment on something that Shanta mentioned about Chief Sustainable Officer being a woman. It's the same thing as diversity and inclusion. It's always the minority being the chief when it comes to diversity and inclusion, because they think that we do it best. But indirectly, it's not really inclusive in a way. So yeah, I'm going to make it very brief and happy to answer any questions after that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Venessa. That's bringing us to the ground with the work that they do for inclusion, particularly reaching out to the indigenous people. We call them orang asal. We'll get you to elaborate a little bit more about what you do. I'm going to move now to Singapore. Esther, are you ready?
Yes, good afternoon, and thanks for having me. I apologize for my husky voice. I'm on day 5 of COVID, and I hope I can get it clear, get out of quarantine in 2 days' time. And really happy to be here. And sustainability is indeed a really mainstream agenda. And I like what all the speakers have shared. Definitely, we are behind in terms of almost half of the SDGs that was established in 2016. But I like the fact that, like what Shanta said, we always have to think positive and always have hope. And what I have seen over the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, we have seen a new dawn for sustainability. And we have also seen global convergence of really the will and commitment, because the whole world has learned that the health of the planet, people, business, and economies are all interdependent and all interconnected. I representing, City Developments Limited, which is actually from the private sector listed company, headquarters in Singapore, but we operate in 29 countries and regions. In the building sectors, we know that we have actually quite a strong impact on almost all the, almost 14 out of 17 goals. That is really climate, energy, waste, man on land, life underwater, partnership, innovation, infrastructure, whatever you name it, building sector have a hand in it. Even you are not in the building sector, everyone live, work, and operate and entertain in a building. So how building sector can play a part in propelling sustainable development is very, very crucial. And I would see that the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of progress in terms of climate, in terms of innovation and technology. Personally, I started my journey in 1995. So the first 10 years, honestly, it was very slow. Nobody were interested to hear from me about anything to do with green. But over the last 10 years, things have changed quite a lot, and especially after 2015, the Paris Agreement, and the last 3 years, we have seen really F1 speed. The net zero agenda in the whole world has really pushed and fast-tracked the change on the adoption of sustainable development goals. Especially you have the financial sectors pushing it, like the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance formed in 2019 and the Net Zero Alliance on Insurance formed in July 2021. And I was very fortunate to be at COP26 at Glasgow. And we witnessed the establishment of Net Zero Banking Alliance and also the Glasgow Financial Alliance. The regulators and the stock exchanges all came together. No businesses can survive without the support of regulator and also investors and bankers and insurance. So all these are really fast tracking, private sector to push the agenda of climate action and also sustainable development. And what we are, delivering is not just about profits, but also how to maintain financial viability, not at the expense of people and the planet. After all, without a healthy planet, there's no healthy people for businesses to thrive. So this is actually the fundamental of the triple bottom line, which also align with the SDG and there's 169 targets as well. And of course, sustainability always have to put on this, gender lens as well. Coming from a sector that it is known to be not very friendly for women, and the building sector actually, is always male dominated. And how can we, strike that balance? I have seen it, my own eyes for like 27 years now, how women have actually climbed up to the ladder and also have a louder voice and presence. And I think we can share a little bit more on this later on the gender, balance. But even in Singapore, a research earlier this year shows that 71% of people who are actually involved in a survey, 71% of them feel that at workplace, there's still gender disparity and inequality. So even in a modern city, that is, still happening. And the more worrying thing is the age group of 17 to 25 feels the strongest, that they are not being treated, fairly. So I think definitely there are signs that we need to do something. And as an old-timer myself, that's why I established a Women for Green network, helping the younger women executives, in the building sector to have a presence and also voices, to, share their opinion. And I truly have full faith in women leadership in driving sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. You cannot call yourself old-timer. Only Tan Sri, Michael and myself, only we can claim to be old-timers.
Relatively. Thank you.
Oh, you're still here? Okay. Thank you. Firstly, you are the epitome of the women being associated with sustainability, with holding the CSO post. Am I right? And you are in a very challenging industry. As you say, it's not very friendly to women. So the first thing is in the governance structure, at least we've got a woman in Singapore, at least in this industry, building industry. But I understand that women are coming in strongly because I know one of our affiliate members in NCWO are the women contractors. And they are fairly strong, a very strong association. So I do believe that they are participating, and if you set standards, as you've been around at all the conferences, I think there are standards that are set. My only concern, and perhaps you can share later, is the transition, what they call just transition to your vendors, your SMEs that you work with, your suppliers and so on. So within the supply chain, and perhaps also Shanta can also elaborate on this. But I do feel having somebody from the building industry this afternoon is a very important step for this conference, because we need to go into the areas that are really not friendly to women. And if we can break into these areas, I think it'll be faster for us to reach the gender gap. Okay, I'm going to, now what's the time? It's 3:49, we're keeping good time. I'm going to go just another round. After listening to all the other speakers, Shanta, do you want to add something to what you have said just now?
Thank you. And yes, and just to comment on the previous speaker, Miss Esther An, she is really a female sustainability pioneer. I'm also proud to have her as one of UNGC members. So what I'm hearing is also like the focus also from Ms. Mia before about trade and how actually businesses can really make a meaningful transition and driving sustainable development. So of course, if we're looking at the ecosystem, there's a big role that is being played by the regulators. And this is mainly, of course, then looking at the corporates. So what is being then left out, and especially in a country as Malaysia, are those SMEs, as they are contributing majority to the economy. And so it is really the question, like, how do we make sure that there is inclusivity in this sustainable development as well? So in UNGC, we are also working on different type of programs to enable SMEs to become sustainable. So in some of the studies that we have done, it actually showed that many SMEs are sometimes already hitting certain sustainability indicators, but they are unaware that this is considered as sustainability. So for example, if we are looking to the ESG, now lately, you know, the E and the climate is a very sexy topic right now. You know, everybody is talking about climate change and all the corporates are jumping on it, etc. But we should not forget about the S, about the social dimension, and of course, gender equality and closing the gender gap, etc. That is all becoming a very important part here. So many of the SMEs are actually focusing on that social component. And I think especially women-owned businesses have a really good opportunity to actually highlight and emphasize on the fact that this is a women-owned business. What are some of the other social components that you are instilling in your business? Whether it is paying a living wage instead of the minimum wage. Now, we've been having many discussions over the past few months and with MEF, etc., about, you know, they're complaining, oh, we don't want to increase the minimum wage because now it's of the pandemic, etc. But think about, what does this mean for your staff? What does this mean for the community? If you are able to pay a living wage, that means that you are enabling and hence also bringing women out of poverty, giving more access to resources, etc. So these are really some of those components that women SMEs can be looking at. And now under UNGC, we also have some SME ESG assessment tools, for example. These are free tools to use for every SME, so please do feel free to look into some of these tools that we can offer. So just to summarize on that, I think that women have a very well positioned to actually focus on that social component.
Thank you. But I can see that even in the environment area, in the building industry, women play a very big role as well, and they can play a bigger role. Can I go on to Mia? Mia, you have anything to add?
Yes, actually, if we just can stay along this line that we have been discussing from, you know, the building industry and now with Shanta talking about regulation, I think what is really important is to understand that government can play the role of providing a set of incentives for women to take more, you know, bigger part in certain industries that were traditionally not at their radar. For example, in building, that is very often part of infrastructural development, where government, through the government procurement or public purchases, can actually set the standards and the rules through which women can have some sort of sort of positive discrimination, in a sense that it can provide positive incentives for them to engage in bidding for certain provision of services or goods in this area. And so the construction and building and related services to that is very important. And I would say that in the global economy, we often neglect to recognize the importance of services sector, and this is where and these services are becoming more and more tradable, particularly now, as we discovered through the pandemic period, digitally enabled services where women can finally actually get to the position of selling in the market, in the global market, their professional services without being discriminated only because they are women. Because in the digital world, often you can mask basically the gender of the service provision, and so this is very important, element in how government, by thinking about how they will regulate the digital space and how they will allow the flow of data across the border, because that will be the leading factor in allowing women actually to get access to the opportunities that opening of the digital economy may mean for them. And the exit from this pandemic crisis, but also the crisis that we see coming coming as a perfect storm now with the inflation, stagflation, and energy and food prices. Services will become, or efficient services will become, even more important, and will be increasingly important as an employer, as a sector. And then also to just mention about the importance of really keeping the markets competitive, and the regulation, the government role in doing that, right? So even when we find that some players in the market may be sort of disadvantaged because of their size, like being small and medium-sized enterprises, the government can actually step in and secure through different mechanisms, still making sure that the market functions efficiently, but also providing assistance to those players that are disadvantaged through their size or location, perhaps in terms of the national or international economy, and help them in that regard. So government does play a very important role, but so does also the private sector, as was noted. They are now much more aware of the positive role that they can play, and providing sort of a leading role in terms of being inspirational for the other firms in their sector. So we should actually celebrate those through different ways, just to provide additional motivation for the other firms, and whether it is through helping them to monitor properly and objectively the adherence to, whether it is Global Compact or some other sort of measurement of following the principles of sustainability and inclusivity. It definitely would play a role. And so let me stop there, because we want to hear from others as well. But there are so many things that we can talk about in this
I know
topic.
you introduced trade, which was very important, and now you elaborated on the role of the regulator, the positive role. I think it is very important. You've mentioned a few the roles, a few things that the regulators can do, and I think one of the other thing that perhaps is in your mind is the disclosure. Of companies, how many women are on the board, and the reporting to Securities Commission, for example. I think these are some of the ways in which we can have gender inclusivity. I'm going to come back to you, Venessa. Now, please tell us a little bit more about what you do on the ground. I think we need ground level stories.
It's actually very hard to follow up with Dr. Mia, because she talks about all this high-level affairs. Yeah, it is. And I'm just trying to think of ways to complement whatever she says, or maybe challenge a little bit of it. But what I can say is I've been doing work when it comes to capacity building at on the ground level, working with communities, the marginalized groups and all of that, from rural poor to urban poor. I think the most important thing is making sure that the process is participatory. I think that's really important. It's not like an afterthought process. Most often than not, everything that we do when it comes to sustainability practices, even though like what Shanta mentioned, that they're actually doing it without realizing it. It's just that we're putting words into it or putting a framework into it, then they realize, okay, so actually what I'm doing, it's on track. But another thing that we have to look into is that whether whatever we introduce to them with their existing traditional knowledge is going to disrupt the operation. I think that's another thing that we can look into, I guess. Other than that, I was just thinking about all these small traders in the rural areas. How would they incorporate ESG into their businesses when they are not, because it's all about access to capitals, right? Social capital, cultural capital, and all of that. And if they do not have all this access to capitals, how do they support either at the national level and regional level in moving or advancing towards all this SDG? I think that's another area that all of us can have a look into. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, an organization like yours has a very important role in educating, like for you say small traders, for example, in the rural areas. Most of the time they don't know all this ESG and all that is way above them, you know. But actually they may be practicing it. And it's about making them aware and maybe reinforcing that and enlarging on that. But I just wonder whether you have a lot of cooperation from, say, government agencies, whether they are regulators or not. How do you go about working synergistically with government and maybe other NGOs and other private sector for sustainability, being on the ground?
Okay, I can share an example of that. So I work with this international organization called RTI International, and we work on community health in the KRTs in KL, and it's actually under part of UK FCDO. And what we do often is that, of course, in every program that we design and develop for the communities, we always have to look into gender and social inclusion lens into it. And we talk to government agencies on what they have in terms of resources. And of course, what do they need this committee to be able to inspire into. And we try to incorporate that with what the local people want, actually the beneficiaries themselves, because often they're not like what our worldview might be different than them. And it's important to find consensus because, again, when we talk about sustainability, it's also sustainability of the practice itself within the community, because we can put in some intervention, but if the beneficiaries think that, oh, it doesn't suit my need, they won't be able to continue with that. So I think that's really important. Thank you.
I ask this because synergistic collaboration is like something new. I mean, it's been there, but it's something being promoted by the government now. In the all society, all nation approach in RMK 12. But I still find that many in government do not understand this. They're working with NGOs. There is still reluctance, or they don't know how to do it. Yeah, so maybe this is an area that needs to be worked on. Before we do that, I want to go to Esther because we need to know this work of the CSO. Can you can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, actually, that was exactly the question I was often asked when I first started carrying this title of CSO in 2014. Although long before that, I was already into green building and all that. And everybody has asked, what exactly do you do, you know? So, but now today, I think not just in Singapore, a lot of countries, you know, the companies are all setting up their own sustainability officers role. And in fact, it created such a big demand for sustainability professional. And in Singapore, of course, we have the SG Green Plan also that is, set to create 55,000, green job in the coming, less than 10 years. So there are a lot of opportunity. If I may just, address what, this sustainability, from the industry aspect, collaboration, and also the women and youth aspect quite quickly. SMEs are actually backbones, for what we do in every industry, because for us, we may be, a larger size, a developer, but along our value chain, most of them are SME, whether they are the architect, consultant engineer, supply chain, and the workers and all that. A lot of them are actually from, SME. And globally, 90%, of our global GDP are actually supported by SME. And in Singapore, it's even higher, 99%, of all our companies are actually SME. So we need to bring them along, because now if we are talking about race to zero, my supplier's footprint is my footprint. If they don't, support us, I will never be able to achieve, global race to zero or the SDGs that we set out to do. And of course, how do we bring them along? Like you said, just transition is important, because we all understand that SMEs lack the knowledge and resources compared to the big boys. So how do we, engage them, give them the knowledge that we need we need from them? And like, for example, we have the green procurement policies. We need to be very clear. We need to tell our supplier, what do I mean by sustainable cement? What do I mean by, sustainable, steel? And what do I mean, by, the green procurement? We do have very regular communication with our suppliers, and really give them the, the knowledge that they need to support us, because they fail, we fail. And similarly, our tenants, as landlord, we also need our tenants to support us, because they, account for the largest share of, the carbon footprint of our building. So we engage them through, we have 100% green lease now. So we engage them from day one. We hand over the premises to them. How should they fit out? We have a green lease procurement and fitting out guideline. Everything you do must be specific. You can't just tell people that, yeah, I just want net zero. I don't care how you achieve it. So the larger boys and, have the obligation, to hold the hand of the SME to go to go green together, because really we need to achieve it together. Partnership is very important. Yeah.
That's your work. Your work is
yes, I do.
Yeah, having the indicators, the targets, doing the training.
Yes. What I do is actually to set out the strategy for the whole company. And setting targets is important. Without targets, we don't know the direction. And the 4 pillars of our sustainability strategy is first, integration. ESG will not succeed if we work in silo. So the second one is innovation and also investment, because if you don't innovate, you can't move the needle, right? And investment is important. Put money where your mouth is, and if you want to go green, you have to raise the performance of your green building using technology, innovation, solutions. Last but not least, the 4I is impact. Whatever we do, there is an impact, positive or negative. We need to track performance and also report. Just now, Tan Sri, you mentioned very rightfully the sustainability reporting. That is a large part of my role, that spill over the whole year of like regulating and tracking performance and tracking all the data, validating it, like for example, science-based target and many numbers of ESG ratings and ranking. And this is the role of the SDG of the CSO, and also a much bigger role on the stakeholder engagement as well.
Yeah. So what you do, you have the principles, and then you set targets for the industry. Am I right?
And then not the industry, for my company,
okay.
And the value chain as well. And of course, when you set the targets, you can't just go home and do nothing, right? You have to make sure that you set the goals, you set the strategy, you have to have the roadmap.
So your vendors have to follow this. Your vendors?
Yes. So we have to train the vendors, also train, internal and external stakeholders. And actually, the role of the CSO is really huge. In 2017, I also, worked with our finance people to launch the first green bond in Singapore. So we have to really learn by doing and growing, not just about talking about green building alone, but also look at how can you get funding. So reporting is important. Without reporting, you can't impress the investor to invest in you. And sustainable finance is a key enabler to help us drive vision into action. And sustainable finance is very key. So for CSO, you really need to be a jack of all trades.
Is it big budget
Yeah.
to finance your sustainability initiatives? Is it?
Yes, for building sector, almost everything is about, investment. And we don't want to call it cost because we do have ROI that, over the last 8 years, actually the savings from energy can be as high as like 4 million a year for us after we put in the electricity and energy efficient fittings and solutions and collaboration with our tenants. So this is a very exciting field for sustainability and everything is changing very fast. And even how do you define what is, scope 1, 2, and 3? How do you achieve science-based target initiative and net zero is a big agenda that I'm really still learning after 27 years. And this is a very exciting time. And the business case of actually embracing sustainability and SDG has never been stronger.
Yeah, before I open to the floor, I want to ask you whether there is a network or an organization of CSOs? And how many women are there? Yeah.
Okay, if you go on LinkedIn, there are plenty of many, organizations. But for our own, we do have our own network, and then the Women for Green is one. And then actually we do have our own Green Sisters network. All the chief sustainability officers come together. We share notes and we share, the challenges and also refer to each other, some of the solutions that we can work on. Today, it is too difficult to move forward without actually collaboration.
Is this Singapore-based or is it regional or global, this network?
The Women for Green Network is on our website. I can put it on the chat box and we welcome anybody. And it is not like a very rigid setup. We actually welcome anyone. We can actually communicate online as well. And we do have in-person events, and the next one is coming up next week also. And we cover, activities like sustainable finance, sustainable fashion, sustainable jewelry, diet, and all that. And bring women together. When women come together, sparks, grow, and ideas will grow too.
Yeah, I can see you have a passion for your work. I'm going to open it now to the floor. You want to say something? Yes.
Can I please give some concluding remarks? Because I do think that Esther's perfectly illustrates like the mindset of many corporates, and also should be this as a wake-up call for SMEs and for women in business to understand that sustainability is becoming your license to operate. So having said that, there are plenty of incentives, business incentives that are out there. There's a lot of information. You can just go online. UNGC has a lot of resources, of course. But for example, if you're an SME and you can indicate that you are meeting certain sustainability requirements, you can get a discount on your loans by Alliance Bank, for example. And there's pots of funding left and right that are all made available specifically for sustainable transitions. So sustainability doesn't have to be always like it's either sustainability or, I have to totally forgo my profit, because in the end, if we treat sustainability as a business transformation, it is a process and it will give you the return on investment, with the risk, if you do not implement sustainability in your SME business, that you will be left out as a potential supplier or as a business or a brand of preference. So, those are just some concluding remarks. Thank you.
I agree that there should be some standards that you should comply with. My worry is it's weaponized, that's all. Now I open to the floor. Any questions? Come to, I don't know, where's the mic? Oh, there. Please identify yourself.
Hi, afternoon. I just introduce myself again. My name is Anja. and I'm also a social enterprise, and I'm also a catalyst to sustainable development goal. Means not only me, I have a group of women change makers that really into educating micro SMEs in having fully understand about sustainable development goal as well as ESG. Okay, maybe I bring back about the SDG agenda based on the principle of that nobody can be left behind. So I agree with Shanta when you just now shared about the incentive for SMEs. It's like a wake-up call. But being working, with the micro SMEs since 2016, we've been like educating them on, a volunteer basis. And I agree with Vanessa's sharing. From her background from the East Malaysia, and with the micro entrepreneurs, that there's a gap in bringing to close the gap with bringing the information, correct information to them, because all that when they hear about ESG, sustainable development goals, it's all like jargon. They don't really understand. So for the past 3-4 years, we have finally made our own module, not certified or but it's all in Bahasa, and we have like partners that also do it in Mandarin and Tamil, because not all Malaysians understand. And what we can see today, like 2016, when Bank Negara also organized a big conference on SDG, and then many other corporates, they are all like to the corporate level. Where are all these micro SMEs? And we have 1.1 million SMEs registered in Malaysia, and they are the biggest polluter. And there's gap because there's no, information for these categories. So I hope that this message, all the findings that we, for the past 4-5 years working with the micro SMEs, maybe UNGP can do something, or we can, maybe, I don't know, collaborate or partner, because we have now the content. We've been now running the preview sessions to officers below or non-executive, so that they understand as well. Because the senior management knows, but not those who are the lower ranking lah. So that's just to share.
Thank you very much. You brought up again the point about the SMEs. SMEs are actually the backbone of business, and a lot of SMEs do not know about ESG principles even. So big corporations may know, and that's why we talk about the just transition. What are you doing to make sure your vendors, your suppliers know about sustainability practices? Any other question from the floor? Yes?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nama saya Wan Maimun. I'm from Women in the Construction Industry.
There you are.
I thought I don't want to come here again because I have passionately said my case in session 4. But Tan Sri, you brought up, so I just cannot not say anything.
Okay.
Tan Sri, you said about construction industry, building industry, and I think Esther also said that, and Shanta also said about SDG 5. So I have to say something. So SDG 5 says achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So how can we, women in the construction industry, achieve that when we are not in the level playing field? The men in the construction industry has started way back in 1960s. They have already started. Women only start to join construction industry in 1980s, late 1980s. We are not yet in the level playing field. How can we tender for big prestigious project with the big boys, against big boys? How can we know about first-hand information about project when we don't really network? Of course we network, but networking with the top management who knows all this information. How can we compete that? So I was even asked point blank, why does you women want special benefit? Why do you want to have special initiative for women? I said, it's a global agenda. So at the moment now, I have prepared a working paper in women agenda in construction industry. Then again, I was asked, why do you have to agenda? I said, because we have a national agenda of women. Okay, then I was asked to get signatures from all the women association. Okay, what I'm going to do, I've already discussed with Dato Azlin, We have this National Federation for Women, so we are using that platform. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a copy. I'm going to give a copy to you, Tan Sri. You go through and see whether, am I asking too much?
Yeah,
I want to also give a copy to Shanta.
Yep.
Maybe the Global Association will assist us.
We've asked before for procurement, you know.
Yeah, that was a few of our
percentage,
ideas.
yeah,
That was in
quota.
our wish list.
Yes.
Way back in 1950s, we come out with a conference for women. Okay, what do you want, women? And we have 12 wish lists. We've been going around since 1915 for this wish list, going around, courtesy
All right.
visit.
I think you make your point. We
Okay,
are all
thank you.
happy to receive, because the budget time is around the corner. We will look at your recommendations, yeah, and see how we can put that in. Let me see the time, because we have to close. Oh, we have 10 minutes. Actually, I want to share my story with Pemuda about sustainability practices. At my advanced age, somehow the government, I'm NGO, you know, I'm not in business. I don't know anything about, I ran a university, but really business as in the private sector, I was never involved. Anyway, they put me in Pemuda and put me in charge of the technical working group on food costs and technical working group on the SDG. The SDG hasn't started work, but actually it has started through the food costs. What I find, if you're talking about sustainability practices, with the businesses that we dealing with food in the food industry, like I say, the ESG principles and all that is way above them, you know. But if you introduce new ideas, which are actually under the sustainability principles and is okay for their bottom line, they will adopt it, you know, without thinking about sustainability. So I feel sometimes you have to work at the industry level and introduce this, and then it's adopted industry-wide. I'll give you the example of the chicken, the first item we worked on. You know, our farms, chicken farm, open farm, it's not sustainable. Closed farming is what we want, you know, and that's very scientific. They use technology, Internet of Things, very innovative. And then you can have thousands and thousands of chicken, and, you know, in terms of mortality, will be less. In fact, their profit will be bigger. So they're willing to take on the closed system, which is more scientific. Provided we help them with licensing and don't make life a big hassle for them to get licenses to do this. Then there are things like upstream chicken feed, which is very expensive, and that was the cost of the price of the chicken. And of course, government policies have a role in this. You know, when you fix the price, the farmers don't want to rear the chickens, okay? So we have a shortage. Then you ban the export. So all these things, it is detrimental to the farmers. And they want to stop their farms. They close their farms. So that's not good for the country. But you can then look at what would be sustainable methods to help the chicken farmers. For example, instead of importing the soya bean and the corn and all that for chicken feed, you have to look at local resources. And if this, you have to do the trials, you have to do the tests, you have to do laboratory experiments, and prove to the farmers that it is better to have alternate energy and protein using local resources. For example, palm kernel cake, PKC, we call it. Yeah, which is a byproduct of the palm, oil palm. And black soldier fly protein, they grow very happily in our environments, you know, and they feed on waste. So it's a circular economy. Yeah, they produce the larva and the larva is used as protein for the chicken. So if you introduce this scientifically and you show them at an industrial level that it works, they will adopt without thinking about even sustainability practices. Yeah, but this is sustainability. So I find that with businesses like chicken farmers, vegetable farmers, anybody else in the food industry, that if you work with them within the industry to show what are the sustainable practices that do not cut into their profits, they will adopt. And I think you can then set industry standards, and which is what we are trying to do in our technical working group. For example, if you have alternate protein from, say, black soldier fly larva, what would be the standards? We have to do that. We work with the universities and so on to set up the standards. Set up the standards for the PKC as well, for the chicken. So then the farmers have the confidence to use. And this is sustainable because it's our own product, it's a waste product, and we have lots of it. So I just want to share this from the viewpoint of, say, the people who are farmers and so on, you know. That is very difficult for them to think about sustainability and ESG principles. But you can, through this type of work, show them that it is profitable and it is good for their business. Okay. Yes.
Sri, can I say something just in connection with the previous speaker and also what you were saying now? So I think just one little element in which, for example, that construction industry can be helped is to assign a quota for women to apply for the government procured sort of projects. And so many countries do that, and you can put aside 10% or whatever percent of the total budget that you will be spending on the procurement that will be assigned to women bidders. And not only developing countries use that. Germany, for example, had to apply quota to women sitting on the managing boards of companies because they couldn't reach or they couldn't make progress with gender parity in terms of the women leadership. And first of all, everyone complained about this, saying that, they couldn't find the skilled women to sit on those positions. But now Germany actually have moved into the first 10 countries on the gender equality list, because not only that, but that was one of the factors. And just one thing, in terms of setting the standards for these companies, I think this is a wonderful example. One caution, however, would be to think about internationally recognized standards when these standards are set for the industry, because if they are aligned with already existing international standards, then you would already making sure that these companies, through the value chains, can be integrated into the bigger markets than only their local markets, which can assure of perhaps financial sustainability as well in their business later on. So I just wanted to bring those two elements because they're complementary to what was discussed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we are coming to, we should be closing now. Let me see my time. Yes. I want to make it short. Okay, come. We have to close. Somebody is going to close it.
Just a very short one. My name is Nirwana. I just wondering, because just now we were talking about CSO. I don't think there is enough policy or some sort of guidelines for SME like us to refer to. So Esther was saying that there is a link for us to can refer in her chat, and we have not seen the chat yet.
Yes, I think Esther will do that. She said she will put it in the link.
chat doesn't go to everyone, but I think I would really recommend any SMEs to go to the UN Global Compact. They have an academy and they have almost everything about sustainability, application. And especially there is an SME guide to corporate sustainability. And also from GRI, there is also an SME guide for reporting. And I think 60% of SME, at least in Singapore, believe in the importance of incorporating sustainable practices in their business, because otherwise investor will screen you out, bankers will screen you out. So there is a strong drivers to do it. So SME have to prove that they have the ability to compete and offer the best to the procurer. And I think with that, that will be the most practical way. And as a procurer, just to address just now the lady you talk about construction, when we engage, supply chain, we don't really look at the gender. We actually look at the merit. And if, whether you're a big company or small company, if you offer the best solution, the best, design, we will go for you, because, we don't go, bias against guy, male or against female. So we don't really have that, policy to just give.
But you will help the women vendors, of course.
Well, for me personally, it's a very strange scenario why we see that building sector is very male dominated. If you look at the World Green Building Council, it's led by a woman. The Singapore Green Building Council is led by a woman. And then there are a lot of actually even Urban Land Institute, APRIA, Asia Pacific Real Estate. I'm the chairperson also for sustainability. So I don't really feel that, that I am being suppressed because I'm a woman. But I think you need to really, offer the substance, the idea, that people want and people will vote for you. So I would love to see it as like the capability and, the substance rather than gender bias. Yeah. And collaboration is key. It's, now time is ticking. There's urgency to fight the climate together. There's no, gender, racial, or, any boundary. Everyone share this one planet. So we all have to collaborate.
Right.
If I can just add to that, under UNGC, as mentioned, we have plenty of SME resources. Now, the programs that I'm looking after are also focused on SME sustainability development. So I'll be here after the panel discussion. So for any women SME that is interested in sustainability, please feel free to reach out for further questions.
I have to end now. Thank you very much. But I think they're waiting to close. The discussion has been very lively this afternoon. I think we brought up many issues on sustainability and the roles of the regulator, role of civil society, and role of private sector. And private sector, I think we have big corporations and we have SMEs. Majority, I think women-owned companies, most of them are SMEs. And I think we really need to address the needs of the SMEs in terms of adopting sustainability practices. And it has to start from financing. I think if they understand what the indicators are, as you say, there are banks that are willing to give loans. And if we can convince the regulator, for us, it's our Malaysian government, about incentives, about procurement, about disclosure, about digital, getting more women onto the digital space and the digital economy. I think we can make headway in terms of adopting more sustainable methods in our businesses without sacrificing profits, people, and planet. So with that, I end. I thank the organizers for inviting me. I hope we have done a good job this afternoon and given a lot of information to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.